Great.
Hey, friends. Welcome. I have been looking forward to this so long. This is my dear friend, Scarlett. Hello, Scarlett. And she and I have been friends for like 10 years now, probably, maybe more than. Probably, we've known each other like not more than. Is that what you're saying?
No,
10 years.
It was after your accident.
But we've probably, I would say, been good friends maybe like 4 years. Something like that. So, we've done a little bit of life together, and thanks for coming back on and talking with me about this. Today, we're going to talk about Beth Moore, Chasing Vines. I've been talking about this on the page for a long time, and I see a few people are popping on. So if you're on, put a little comment, say hey, so we know you're watching. I'd love to say hey back to you. Scarlett, I want to ask you, like, what's your, for lack of a better word, relationship with I was going to say Brene Brown because we were talking about Brene Brown before we started with Beth Moore. Like, how long have you liked her stuff, and do you read a lot of her stuff? I'm just curious.
I have known Beth Moore since I was a new Christian, and in college, I think I did a few of her Bible studies. And one of my dear friends, Carrie, had me do her Breaking Free Bible study, and I've done Breaking Free 3 times.
Oh my goodness!
Mm-hmm.
I've never done Breaking Free.
Oh well, if you haven't done it, I really suggest it.
I guess so. Yeah,
3 times.
Yes. No, I've never done that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I did it when I was in college. It's really a powerful Bible study about getting stuff out of your life that needs to be, you need to break free from stuff.
Yeah.
And I've done it in very important times of my life. And every time something new comes out of it. So
I think that's beautiful about studying the Bible is when you go back and do the same thing, whether it's like a Bible study like that or scripture, because we've talked about experiencing God because you've done that one several times too, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I've had a few things like that I've done several times. And when you study something, the Lord, he brings new stuff to light as you study something, even if you've studied again before. So I've actually not done her Bible studies. I've read a lot of her books and I watch her preach a lot. And but I've been Beth, over 20 years. I have followed her stuff, and I will say probably she is one of the biggest influential voices in my Christian maturing process. Like I really appreciate her and her story and her witness. And I have 2 times I've never seen her. Have you ever seen her in person? Have you? Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. 2 times I've had tickets. No, I don't know if you know this. 2 times I've had tickets to see her. And this is kind of sad, actually. You're going to be like, oh, this is terrible. It is kind of terrible. The first time I had a miscarriage and I couldn't go. And the second time I had tickets when we had our car accident 10 years ago and I couldn't go. And so my husband was like, you don't get to buy tickets to see Beth Moore anymore.
Seriously.
Somebody's
got to get you tickets for you. You can't buy them.
I've never seen her. So both times I'm like, well, guess I ain't going. So, but I know, isn't that terrible? But I love her so much. And so I'm looking forward. I loved this book and I am looking forward to learning. Scarlett and I were texting before as we we're kind of preparing to talk today. And I sent her some things that were important to me. And she sent some things that were important to her. And we thought it was really interesting that like none were the same. And I think that's just one of the beautiful things about a rich work like this is because depending on like what my stuff is and your stuff is, we glean very different things from it. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you. And Lisa Wood says, hey, and no more tickets. No more tickets. So I'm going to jump in here and we're just going to go back and forth with some of the key points that we took. Good morning, Janice. I hope you're doing good today. The first one that I picked out was the idea from chapter 7 that grapes like rocky soil. That chapter was kind of hard for me. And if you haven't read the book, the whole thing is about the vineyard, John 15, abide in me, and the fruit and producing more fruit and good fruit and sweeter fruit. And so, but there was this idea in the chapter that a grapevine does better in rocky soil, which here's the quote that stood out to me so much. Sometimes what God has done for us can feel instead like something he has done to us. And she talks about how the thing that he has done for us is actually cause us to depend on him more. And when I think about some of the low points or trials, or even like, I don't know, tell me what you think about this. My idea of being in rocky soil is like this sort of thorn in your flesh, right? That Paul calls
Mhm.
like it's not going away because
Yeah,
I do, and maybe you do, and probably most of us have something that just keeps coming up, right? Or
yeah,
it's just something that kind of is continually painful or troublesome to us in our relationships. And I struggled a little bit to really kind of wrap my mind around the fact that he doesn't really maybe have any intention, right, of uh, taking a shovel and getting that rock out of the way because that rocky soil that I'm in, that like constantness of this sort of thorn in my flesh that Paul talks about, actually is what keeps me dependent on him. I don't
yeah,
know, that was, like, really big for
yeah,
me, not because I never thought of it quite that way before, that actually I need those things
yeah,
so that I'm less to depend on myself to solve the problems, right?
yeah. I think the metaphor that I think it's in this chapter because it's kind of right along what you're saying is that like the pretty vines that are real big and green, they don't have really great fruit on them because
Mhm,
their soil is easy and
mhm,
comfortable. And so they're just thinking, I just want to be big. But when the rocks are there, it makes them go into kind of a survival mode. Like
mhm,
we have to really dig deeper and work harder to push out the best grapes.
mhm.
I just the metaphors that are all over this book are just amazing to me.
All over the book. Yeah, it just I had a hard time when I first sent Scarlett some notes. I had, like, probably 10 point I'm like, "Okay, I'll narrow this down just a little bit so you can talk too." But but she says a little bit later in the book about the difference between our pain having a purpose and being worth it. And I think I've struggled with that through my life through a couple, like, big things that kinda stay with me, kind of in this rocky soil kind of thing. Like,
Mhm,
there's a difference between what I call giving my pain a job, like give my pain something to do. And that doesn't mean that what I've been through or what's happened to me is worth it, but it actually it's purposeful in
mhm,
that you can use it. The Lord can use it for something that then actually produces the better fruit. But here's the question for me that I had to ask myself, and I don't know that I really know the answer to this quite yet, if I'm just being honest, is do I want to be big and green? Or do I
mhm.
want to be smaller and have good fruit? That makes me emotional just saying it out
Yep,
loud, right? Like, because, gosh, don't we just wanna be big and green and in the comfortable soil? Like, look at me, I'm big and green,
yep.
and I have some fruit, that's the tricky part, right?
Mhm.
I have some
Yeah,
fruit, but her whole point in the book was, what kind of fruit are you I think one of the ones I took away anyway, what kind of fruit are we aiming for? Because God wants us to be abundantly producing the best fruit, and that
mhm.
doesn't happen in that comfortable place.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
even
so
creation tells us it doesn't work
yeah,
that way. I mean,
right?
like, why would we think it would be any different?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the enemy tells us that it can be different,
Oh,
or
well,
we
and
live
I just
into
think
that, yeah. Mhm,
when you're going by vines
mhm,
and they're beautiful, you don't stop and look and go into the vine and look at it. You're just going by and everybody
uh-huh,
sees the pretty vines. And I think, man, I don't do I want a life that people can just zip by and say, "Oh, look how nice that is." Or do I want someone to stop and be like, "Whoa, what's going on with this vine? It looks crazy. It's
uh-huh,
so sparse." Because most of
uh-huh,
the time vines that are really good producers look ugly, to be quite
uh-huh.
honest.
Oh, and I don't want to look ugly. I got I'm like Jeannie says, "I like comfortable." I think we all like comfortable.
Yeah,
We crave comfortable,
yeah,
and we try to we make comfortable. Yeah,
yeah,
we do a good job of staying comfortable. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What's one let's go. Let's get one of yours, like, top, takeaways that you really liked.
Um, on in chapter 4, around it's the chapter name is Song, but I don't really remember why it's called Song, but that doesn't matter. Page 67, she says no, she's talking about in the chapter um the different emotions of God, and she pinpoints Jesus as a human being and the emotions that he had here on this earth when he was living here. Um And she brings up this really amazing concept that no one is exempt from the pain of rejection, not even God. Um, and, we don't think very much about God being vulnerable, but
Mhm.
man, he is.
Mhm.
And like even at the end on page 67, the quote she says, knowing why, because Jesus knew, okay, because he was fully God, he knew everything that was going to happen, but knowing why, okay, Jesus on the cross, knowing why, it didn't keep him from asking why on the
Yeah.
cross.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. This chapter was just, I could probably reread it several times and still not get the whole point, but something about this chapter made me just again realize how vulnerable God makes himself, and that is good.
Mhm.
Because when
Mhm.
God is something, I want to be that. And let me
Mhm.
tell you something I struggle with is being vulnerable.
Mhm.
And she goes back at the very end, and she's been talking about this Isaiah passage. And I love also Beth Moore. She has a deep knowledge of scripture, and she can like she's not just in John 15, guys. She's in all over the place, all over the place. She's in Genesis. She's
Bringing
in
it together.
Isaiah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, because she
Mhm.
wants to show you this metaphor is
Yep.
all over the place, this
Yep.
mind
Yep.
metaphor. But she goes back to the Isaiah passage at the end of chapter 4, and she says, God waits in expectation. And that's a phrase you hear a lot, that
Mhm.
God is waiting in expectation. That sounds like an oxymoron. He knows what's going to happen. How is he waiting in expectation?
Mhm.
And then it says he goes through this whole process of making this vineyard and making it perfect and doing all these things and working the ground and doing the work. Like he's in there doing the work, the process of growing this stuff. And he's waiting in expectation for the fruit. And the fruit ends up being rotten.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, God is vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave my best to this. Have we ever been there in that situation? I poured everything I had into this. Makes me emotional to say it.
Mhm.
And yet this is what I get. This is the result. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so much of it depends on us. He allows so much of it to depend on us, what we produce. Because I believe that the ground is level for us in terms of the opportunity to be in a relationship with him and to produce. The Bible is clear. He shows no favoritism. All hearts that come to him are gifted for work and for fruit, right? And so it's whether we have it or not. And I think that's hard to admit, but whether we have it in our life or not depends on us, and
Yeah.
our response to him. One of the saddest verses in scripture, I don't know exactly, it's in the first part of Jeremiah, maybe like 17, and it goes along with this, what you're saying from Isaiah, because God is talking about how he's trying to refine the people, and yet it says the refining goes on in vain. Like, I'm trying
Mhm.
to do this to you. I'm trying to do this with you. I'm trying to get this uck out of you so that you can be more fully devoted to me. And yet the refining goes
Yeah.
on in vain because you won't do it. Uh,
I have to just say this scripture because it goes with what you just
okay,
said.
good. I was like, where did
Okay.
she go? She disappeared.
When another book I'm reading, but it's
Yes.
Isaiah 65:1,
Yeah.
because it goes with his vulnerability. It's
Uh-huh.
so beautiful. It says, this is God talking. He says, I am ready to be approached by those who do not study me, ready to be found by those who do not seek me. I say,
Uh,
I am here to the people who do not even invoke my name. God is so awesome.
yeah. Yes. Yes. And he takes such risks for us, on us. Yeah. Mhm.
Always.
Yeah.
And we still don't believe that he loves us completely.
Mm-mm. No, I get so wounded by the rejection of mankind.
Mm.
And it never crosses my mind how when I'm seeking affirmation from mankind, what I'm really doing is rejecting him.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. That's bad
Right.
of me. I should fix
Mm.
that. Ah,
Mm.
I laugh, but I only laugh because it's like that nervous laughter because I know it's very true what I just
Yes.
said about myself. Yeah. So
Yes.
that's beautiful. I'm glad that you pulled that out. I really am. So I really liked the chapter on manure. I found that hilarious and it's very true in a like a lighthearted way. And so part of Beth's uh I don't know, writing on this is that sometimes things in our life are like fertilizer, like manure, because the vines also need fertilizer. And I thought she had a really interesting way of saying, sometimes things are for learning purposes in our lives, right? And sometimes it's just manure. And at the end of the chapter, I thought it was funny. She said manure happens. But I sometimes I get bogged down in a what am I supposed to learn from this? Or what is this for in my life? And I kind of cry out to him, or even maybe like blame a little bit, like, why have you brought this into my life when I don't see the reason? And I thought, is some of it just manure? Where it's like,
Mm,
it's just kind of some bad stuff to weather or deal with. But then actually, it's just kind of something that like packs around your vine and like nourishes it somehow. Even if sometimes the thing that we learned is, I don't want to behave like that, or, where it holds up a mirror to our face a little bit,
yes.
but maybe there's not like some deep meaning in everything. I tend to go for, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, me,
Yeah.
I tend to like be looking for this deep meaning in everything. And sometimes it's just crap. I don't know. Like, it
Yeah.
just, yeah. And I liked her. She said and this is chapter 15 on manure. The next time you're faced with an unpleasantry that seems to possess no real value, even after prayer and good, stiff self evaluation, it might be of comfort to file it away in the manure category. Well, it's like, that was just unpleasant. And I think I need to move on now.
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, that was very freeing to me. And I think, it's a balance because we do have to, I think she says after some prayer and good stiff self-evaluation, you got to hold up that mirror to your face and say, at some point, you got to say, Lord, what do you have to teach me in this? What is this about in my life? And
Mhm.
then when you feel like you've learned it, the rest of it, you just got to let it go. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was interesting for me. Jeannie says, I'm stepping on her toes with the rejection thing. Yes. Sorry, my friend. But yes, we're in the same boat. Yes. Janice says, I like how she said in the chapter on manure that our histories don't get to impose themselves on us like prophecies. Oh,
Mm,
yeah. That's good
that's
stuff.
good.
Yes, and I can get one of my like weaknesses or maybe negative personality qualities is that I can get bogged down in like sort of a victim mentality, or this was done to me, or I've got to what am I trying to say? Like um this is a part of me that like I have a hard time letting go of things like this happened to me and now this dictates my life, right?
Yeah.
Um, I have a hard time separating this happened to me and it defining me. Does
Yep.
that make sense? Yeah,
Yep.
and I think what Janice is saying points to that our
Yep.
histories don't get to impose themselves on us like prophecies. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's
We are
very
not
free.
who we were. We are not what we did. We're not,
Mhm.
that's not who we are.
Yes, 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 exactly. Yeah, that's hard for me to separate. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
tend to stay there and wallow, for lack of a better word. So,
Yeah.
how about you? What's another takeaway that you really liked?
Um, Chapter 17 is called the ingathering, which I've never heard that word used in a normal basis, but I gathered from the ingathering that meant that that's the day that they harvest together as a community. And man, I just thought this was awesome because what I really got out of this chapter is that the community shares the work, and this kills individual egos. And so
Mm,
what that means is that as an individual, I can get wrapped up in what I'm doing for the Lord, and then I can look around and judge people and compare myself, which kills my joy. And then obviously that's not good fruit. Whatever I'm doing for the Lord individually, that's not of the Lord, because I'm over here judging and comparing myself, which kills joy. But the community is what actually brings the joy, the togetherness. And it says, in the presence of co-laboring, ego shrinks. And
mm,
I just love that quote. And then she talks a little bit about like when we get stuck on the individual and what we're doing. On page 249, she says, we resist offering ourselves wholly to anyone or anything that encroaches on our personal desires. And that's just convicted me because I am a person that likes to do things on my own. I like to be the leader. I like to be the I, I like to be, like me. And I don't really like to share the work because then I don't get all the everything. And whenever you're not vulnerable, see, that word keeps coming up.
mm,
Whenever you're not vulnerable to other people and allow people in because you're worried about your own personal desires and what you want and what you're going to get out of it, it's lost. You've lost your joy. You've lost all the fruit you thought you're going to make out of this. And it's just worthless, really, when you don't allow others in and you don't share the work with others.
Mhm.
It's
And
convicting.
while we're very convicting, and while we're comparing, we're not letting others in. We're not, we're not behaving that way. I'm doing a study right now on, it's called Comparison Girl, and it talks about two different kinds of comparison, and there's the kind that I think that you're talking about where we like elevate ourselves. At least I'm
Mhm.
not doing as bad as they are, right? But I think as prevalent in our Christian circles, our faith communities, is that we compare ourselves like down. Well, I can't do as good as they are, and somehow we think that that's like a sense of humility or something. But it's not. That's just a
No.
different way, a form of pride.
Yeah.
When we're so self focused on ourselves that we're like, well, I can't have fruit like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try. Or we look at the, like we were talking about before, we look at the big green vines and we look at our, like, sorry to say, ugly, slow process. I'm speaking only
Mhm.
for myself, but not really. And we're like, well, why don't I have that? Right.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I'm obeying and I'm doing what you want me to do. And here I still am, small and ugly. And not much to show for myself. But to realize he's like, oh, that's not what I see. I don't see small and ugly, right? I
Mhm.
see obedient and full of potential and beautiful. And he sees us very differently. But yeah,
Yeah.
true joy. Yeah, I'm looking at your notes on that. Togetherness brings joy. In the presence of co-laboring, ego shrinks. Um, we we know probably in our faith communities, we know well it's Romans 12, right? The body of Christ, and the eye can't say to the hand, and these things. I'm not quoting it right,
Mhm.
but we know that. But I who lives that? What that's we don't live that very well in
No.
our in our
Well,
faith
it's
communities.
threatening.
Or it
It's
is
threatening.
threatening.
It's loss of control. It's vulnerability. They're going to hurt you, right? Because they're human and I'm going to hurt people. And so all of your failings, everything's going to be out there in the open because when you live that way,
Mhm.
you're going to get broke. You're going to
Yeah.
get broke. Uh,
And I don't think that just doing my part is good enough, right? I need
no.
to do other people's parts too.
Well,
Yeah.
they're not going
And
to do it right.
right.
Exactly
Right.
what you sent out this morning in your freaking email. Girl, that was a word. I was like,
Scarlett was, like, the first to comment on my blog post,
what?
which actually, if you're on my email list, you got it already, but I haven't even posted it on my Facebook page yet, but I wrote just so you know, I wrote about a time when my husband tried to help do the laundry. Well, he did help do the laundry, he didn't
Yeah,
try. I
you
got
did
home from being away, and he, like, did most of the laundry, and my first reaction was irritation because he messed up my laundry schedule and probably didn't do it right, and he was just grinning, and he was so pleased with himself, and, it, like, really took the Holy Spirit really kind of spoke to me, like, do you ever feel this way? I'm kinda chasing a rabbit now, but that's okay. Where it was impressed upon my heart, what you do right now is really important.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in that place where it was just kind of like, "This is about laundry," but it
I
ain't?
just bulldozed right over that feeling.
Well, I have to, but I didn't that day. I mean, I kinda did. I had caught myself, I guess I will say. And I
Ugh.
was able to tell my husband, "This really irritates me, but it shouldn't." Like, I recognize that it shouldn't, and it
Right.
was the beginning of that vulnerability that you're talking about. Because I find that difficult sometimes in those moments, even with my spouse, right? Who I should be able to, but that day I'm like, what you have to say is my control issues and my perfectionism and my feelings of inadequacy, because one of the things I didn't write about because it just didn't fit very well was the other thing I felt like was he was saying was you actually are overscheduled and you can't get things done, so I'll have to do them for you, sort of thing. So it was like attacking
Um,
my insecurities, right? And and I control that by doing this. Well, oh, it was just a mess of things inside, but it like manifested itself in these neatly piled clean clothes, right? Oh,
yeah.
yeah, it was an interesting moment. So
Ugh.
something else that I pulled from the book that I really liked is from chapter 16 when she was talking about she was talking about the pests, right? It was the enemy. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the chapter, but she was talking about the enemy. And I want to just add here before I say this about the chapter. One of the reasons that I have admired Beth Moore the way I have for years is because she was the first woman for sure, but really the first person in my life that was like a voice of truth in my life when I was younger Christian, that spoke smartly about the enemy.
Yeah.
I had an experience one year, one summer. I used to work at our denomination's licensing school in Bloomington, and I had what I know now was one of the fiercest spiritual attacks that I've ever experienced in my life. But I was very young in that. But I believed, like, I had this like sense that this is about a spiritual attack, but I had no ammunition. I had no I was pretty sure that was true, but I had no idea, how to like handle
Deal with
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I started looking at YouTube. I was like, I think it was YouTube. Yeah, and I was just like, you know, I can't remember what I was typing in something. Anyway, a sermon from Beth Moore popped up that talked about the enemy, and it was the first time I'd ever heard it talked about just like in just straight smart talk
Mhm.
about this is real and this is true and this has happened to me, and if you are working to be a part of God's fruit and to share his witness to bring glory to his name. I don't want to use like big church things, but if you're trying to use your life, here's how I will say it. If you want to use your life as an illustration of his redemptive power, expect this to happen to you
Yeah.
like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt it was I won't ever forget it. But anyway, so her in this chapter 16, she's talking about the idea that the battle with the enemy is real. And she says this, and that just meant a lot to me. It said, one of these days, when we get to talk with Jesus face to face and recount to him how the pestilence nearly destroyed us, amen, he
Mm.
might tell us, perhaps with a smile, that our souls were never at risk,
Mm.
and really neither was our fruitfulness.
Mm.
That our souls were never at risk, and really neither was our fruitfulness. He never took his eyes off us. He never left us on that battlefield alone. He fought for us. He defended us. He took the assaults against us personally. And I just received so much from that chapter because I guess I'm in a place in my Christian walk right now where I have experienced a lot of that and I've grown a lot of that, but I'm still hungry for other people to talk to me about their experiences because I don't have a lot of like camaraderie or something like with that. And I just feel like she is so brave to say, the attacks. She talks about one part in this book where she went through kind of a season of testing or pestilence, however she describes it, for like 9 years.
Yeah.
She talks about that, and that doesn't mean like it was constantly awful for a long time, but really like that, the refining and the learning to fight the enemy, for me anyway, has gone hand in hand, right? Because
Mhm.
the more you get your stuff, you allow the Lord to get your stuff out of the way, the more you can, when he's pushing on you, the enemy's pushing on you, can say, no, that's my stuff talking. And
Yeah.
so if I take that stuff and go back to God with it, then actually you can't touch me there because he's stronger than that. But
Mhm.
my tendency so much sometimes is to get bogged down in the weeds of my stuff. And then I'm struggling, right? Then I'm in a place of struggling. So anyway,
Well,
I don't, yeah. Yeah.
I think
What do you,
I think a lot of the times our stuff is so, I hate to say the word comfortable, or like
mm,
we're just used to it. It's like we're on autopilot sometimes of the real of stuff that says in our mind. Like I just realized this morning something about something I've kept doing, and I just realized I've been doing it, and it's like you always say, Satan ain't real smart.
right.
He's not using these really sophisticated ways. And it's crazy how much we don't see it
Hmm.
because we're so comfortable with it.
Right.
Like it's just, oh, well, this is just the way I think.
Yeah.
But then
Hmm.
when you stop and say, no, that's not true, it's kind of crazy.
We choose we choose our routine, and I'm talking about not our out, but like our inside, like our emotional processes and how we deal with things. We choose routine even if we don't like it, but we understand it and it is comfortable. So sometimes I think moving forward just in the same way, even if we don't like it, is better than saying, no, I actually want to do this differently. When I was
Yeah.
actually in some counseling with a trauma therapist, one of the things that she taught me, and this is like getting like deep in the weeds, but one of the things she taught me was actually our brains like have these paths that
Neural
they take.
pathways.
Yeah, okay, you know what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
when we thought a certain way for a while, this was huge for me when I learned this, and I'm learning, I'm getting better at it. When my thought process is goes a certain way all the time, like, for instance, something happens and I feel rejected. That's, like, a big thing for me. That happens and I feel rejected. Well, I have to tell myself, actually, don't think that way, right? You need to try to train your brain and say, there are a lot of other reasons that that person could have done that instead of just it being about you and them not liking you, right? But it's a
Yes.
process. But so often I'm like, but that was hard work for me. And it still is
Yeah.
hard work for me sometimes. And so we would rather sometimes just take and say, well, they rejected me too, instead of doing the work that we need to do and say, actually, no, there are other
Mhm.
options there. And I can even if it's true, this has been a hard one. Even if it is true that they rejected you, that doesn't change who you are.
That's
It
right.
doesn't change who you are because you are a blood-bought baby girl, and he it doesn't change his love for you, and if that's the thing that you want the most, his love for you, then you already have it and you're
Yep.
secure there. Yeah, and that's been huge for me to realize that I can actually that I have some control over that in a good way, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
What are they? Neural pathways? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Neural pathways. Yep.
Neural
They
pathways,
like
yeah.
tread like a track to a lake. Somebody
You
keeps
know
going the same way.
You know what I always think it is for those of you who don't know, we live in a university town. I do anyway. And on campus at SIU, when the students are there, there are sidewalks all over the place between buildings, but there are obvious shortcuts that students have taken across the grass, where there's grass everywhere, but there's this dirt like
Yep.
little path where
Yep.
over and over again the students have killed the grass because they take the shortcut. And that's what I think. I'm like, that's what that is in your brain.
Mhm.
You need to say no. I'm going to take the sidewalk around. I'm taking the sidewalk around. I'm not gonna go that place because that actually is killing something and, whatever,
Yep.
and that's what I think of. Yeah, it's that, but it's the easiest path to take, by at this point because I've been doing it so long, right?
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Lisa says, "Oh, hey, Kathy, how are you?" Hey, Lisa Miller. Lisa Wood says, this is circling back to the laundry. You'll appreciate this, though. When my husband does, quote, "my job" to help me, it makes me feel inadequate that I can't even do the few things I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
Boy, I have really worked on that. I'm glad, and I have too. Yeah, I have too, because I knew in that moment with the laundry, there was no way in the world my husband was what he was trying to say is, "You're actually not doing a good job being a wife
Right.
and mother." I knew that,
No.
but I still, was feeling it, and I was very tempted to react from it. Yeah, so
It's one of those neural pathways.
exactly, it's
Something
exactly what
we
it
just
is.
got in
Yep,
there.
yep, yeah, and, her book and her writing this time it offered some correction for me in some of those kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. So let's do your last one too. I liked this chapter a lot too. There was a whole lot in there about how death is important. Yeah.
Yes. This is kind of coming from chapter 11, but a little bit of 12, but she's talking about um, how death is so important to growth and life. And
Mhm.
she talked about, as a little bit of a funny, she's like, all this training that you can get, there's not a lot for coming and dying and training. And that's what Christ actually calls us to do, because that's what he did. He came and he died for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, on page 167, it says, over the long haul, the weight of the unchecked human ego becomes a heavier load to bear than the cross. And
Whoa, the weight of the unchecked
unchecked
human
human
ego
ego.
becomes a heavier burden to bear than the cross. Yikes. Okay, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I mean, humbling yourself and dying to yourself, allowing people in to be vulnerable, to show up and maybe mess up and not think about how you look and appear and how good you are, whatever, all those things that we do to make sure that we look like, we've got it all together.
Got it all together. Good church girls, sometimes I say,
That's
right?
right.
Yep,
That's
I
right.
look like a good church girl. That doesn't need to be my goal to look like a good church girl. Yeah,
You know,
mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, it's just all of that, the burden of what all that entails for every one of us as human beings.
Mhm.
I love that. I mean, that's a heavier load than the cross. If we would just die a little, just
And
stop.
that goes to the very beginning when we were talking about the 2 vines, the big green one that's pretty when you drive by, and the scrawnier one that's maybe more removed and less celebratory.
Mhm.
But which one is carrying the heavier burden? Because the one in the rocky soil, even though things are not perfect, right? And things are tough sometimes, That one is learning dependence on Jesus Christ, the thing that is incorruptible, the thing that's always
Mhm.
dependable, and that
Yeah.
that vine is learning that, and the other one is trying to do it in her own resources, and I think that that's what you're saying. That's a heavier load to bear. You are not
Mhm.
equipped, daughter, to carry this on your own,
Mm-mm.
and but dang, we try. We
Yeah.
try. Yeah. I liked what you wrote down here that where she says the decaying matter is essential to sustaining life.
Yeah.
The decaying and sometimes I think the decaying matter is our life is really the things like you're talking with her breaking free study, the things that we're willing to let go. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not even like she talked about how good things have to be pruned. Sometimes we didn't neither one of us brought that up specifically, curiously, but
That's for
we can't
another
talk
time
about
we read
everything.
this.
We can here all day if we talked about everything. But sometimes I think it's even that, like, for me, some of the things that have caused a lot of grief in my life have been letting go of what I thought my life should have been.
Yeah.
This, like, this idea of what the choices that I either didn't make or couldn't make, or the ways that my story has unfolded that are not beautiful and uh, I don't know what, to me
Yeah.
anyway, but I'm learning they are to him because that gives him it's that fertilizer and that rocky soil and that place that continually keeps me dependent on him. Because a child that is dependent on him is worth so much more to the kingdom than the one that tries to get up every day in her own resources. That's
Yeah.
hard for me to own, but I know that it is true. Yeah. Um,
The
yeah,
last thing
go ahead.
I
Yeah.
just thought just that, for the resurrection to happen, Christ had to die. And for our own resurrection, we have to die. And I think that looks different than for everybody, like what you
Mhm,
have to die to, just like you
mhm,
said.
mhm.
Some of that is just dying to thinking that you can do it all on your own, or that you don't need people, or that I don't need my husband to do my laundry or do the dishes for me
Mhm,
because I obviously do it better than him,
mhm,
right?
mhm. Yeah.
Like, it's just even the little things every day, like,
Yes.
am I going to allow my husband to love me the way he loves me?
Yeah,
Or am I going to try to force my hand so I can look like I can do it all?
yeah. It is. I think that's such an important point. It is, for me, I'm thinking of like some of that has had to die in my life and continues to die in my life is that because I had abuse in my past, that then I'm not who I should have been or could have been. Like that
Mm,
has to die in you, that you're not who you could have been if this hadn't happened to you. But also and that's been a huge thing that's taking years, and I'm not quite on the other side of it, I wouldn't say. Maybe I never will be, I don't know. But there's the little things, that are just as important in that, do I show up today for my children, right? Do I show up from
mhm,
the best place of me? Do I give myself to the Lord and let him teach me today, right?
yeah,
Do I ask the question, what does love require of me today? And so I think it's this there's a breaking free that's like this kind of as we deal with some because we all have some of that stuff in our lives. But then there's the also the everyday dying to self surrender of I actually am going to think of other people more than myself today. I don't that's I'm not saying that because I do that every day by any means, but
yeah,
that is the hope for us. So I like Janice said she was talking about the enemy. She said, I think she hit the nail on the head when she said that when we turn the attacks inward, that our own hands take a crowbar to every crack
mm,
in our armor. Yes. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. And Lisa's talking about how to remember that manure is fertilizer. The thing that seems useless might be working in a way we can't see.
mm,
Mhm.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because, yeah, go ahead.
another thing we never said is, I
Mhm.
don't, like I feel like the overarching theme of her thing is that God likes to watch things grow, and he is a slow, like
See,
he's
he's
like
not
the
in a
farmer.
hurry.
He's the farmer. It's like my dad. He sits in his backyard and watches his garden grow, and I'm not kidding. He sits and watches it grow, and he enjoys that.
Yeah.
And that's God. Like,
Yeah.
he is sitting, and he's not sitting on his chair watching all of this either. Like, he's even
Mhm.
better
Oh,
because
yeah.
he's, like,
Right.
down in the dirt with us, like I
Right.
said, doing it all, fixing it all, pulling the weeds when it needs to be pulled.
Mhm.
But, like, he loves the slow process of our growth. Like, if he wanted us to be these perfect individuals, he could just, as soon as we
Yeah.
gave life to him, he'd be like, "Okay, boop, there you go.
Yep. You're
There's
good.
another little
Mhm.
Jesus."
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that's not the way it works. He doesn't want it that way.
I think he delights so much when we choose him.
Yeah.
In the big and small things, because most of our choosing him is the small things, let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
daily choosing him, and I think he just delights when we choose him or when we remember, like, for me, like, when my soul, like, is, like, in this chaos that it gets in sometimes, and I pause and I take a breath and I say, "I will praise you. I will find something right now to praise you for." And there's, like, this that happens and, something just, like, clicks in my brain, like, I'm like, "Yes, I will switch my focus and I will choose him right now in this moment." I think he just delights in that when we do that in the littlest ways.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, um, I'm watching our time. This has flown by, but we've already been on here for quite a while. So what else? Any final, anybody that's watching, you got any final thoughts or questions or points? I'm going to do a little plug for our June book. If you haven't read the book, those of you who are watching now or later, I just recommend it so much. And I
Mhm.
actually listened to it. Did you listen or you read it on your Kindle? You said, didn't
I
you?
read
Yeah.
it twice. I listened
Oh,
to it and then I read it.
yeah. I listened to it and I loved it in her voice. I'll have to
Yes.
say, like, when I was actually getting to the very end, I was in my closet, like, hanging up some laundry. My life is laundry, apparently. I was hanging up some laundry and I knew it was getting to the end. And she was talking about how we would, be home someday. And the book was winding down. And I was like crying because I didn't want it to be over because I really had enjoyed it. But also just the way she ended it about, like, it's worth all of this is worth something for him. Like, he sees you. Like, I mean, he sees you. And I thought that was just so beautifully said. So, yep, I totally recommend
Mhm.
it, and I would read it again and get all kinds of different things out of it, I think.
Mhm.
So, absolutely. So we have a couple of things still coming up. I just want to do a little quick commercial. Um, Lisa says, I'm glad to see you listened and read because she does that too. She likes to do that. Yeah, listen once and read once. And Kathy
Mhm.
says, sorry, to finish the book, waiting for becoming Mrs. Lewis to come in the mail. Yeah, no, you don't have to be sorry. I hope this is not one of this. We didn't do any spoilers just because we told you things that meant to
No.
a lot to us. It's still worth reading for yourself because,
Yes.
yeah, so much. So, on the 20th, which is like next Thursday, I think. No, next Wednesday. Lisa Marie and I are going to be on again just to shoot the breeze and talk about some things. And then on the 22nd, a week from Friday, I have an acquaintance by the name of Erin Todd who talks about how she talks about negative body image as Christians. And I believe she has overcome an eating disorder and she talks about following Jesus, not diets. And she's going to come on for a chat on May 22nd. And I'm looking forward to talking to her. And then on May 28th, Shannon Popkin is going to be on. She wrote this new Bible study called Comparison Girl, which launches on the 19th, next Tuesday. And I've been on her launch team. And I'll tell you what, Scarlett, this book has been rocking my world because it's so crazy because why didn't I? But I really didn't think about how much I compared myself to other people until I've
Mm.
been reading this book. And the Lord's just really been convicting me, but lovingly calling me to correction, right? In some ways and saying,
Yeah.
just take notice of how much head time you give sizing yourself up against other people. I hate that. I hate that I do that. But this is book. So anyway, Shannon's coming on and we're going to spend a little bit of time. That's on the 28th and all this. And then in June, I'm so excited about this too. We're doing Becoming Mrs. Lewis. You like C.S. Lewis stuff, don't you?
I do, and I know the story because I read some kind of biography or autobiography about their story. It's
Yeah.
super sad.
Yeah.
So, like, is it sad? Is the book
Not
sad?
yet. Not yet, but it's going to be, I'm sure, because,
Have you read his grief book?
no. Mm-mm.
You need to read that next. Girl, it will break your heart. I'm gonna take you to the floor. No, I don't need to read that book. It's super sad.
Well, I'm reading it. I'm listening to it. Scarlett's not coming on to talk about it. Lisa Marie
No.
and Patty Callahan, the author, will be with us to talk about that
I
on
would
June
like
6th.
to hear what
So,
she says because
me
she's
too.
read all the stuff too.
Yeah, I've been watching some other interviews with her actually just to kind of get to know her, in different ways. And she's very stand and she's just a very intellectual. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to talking to her. I'm
Is
going
she
to look
British?
at some of her interviews and stuff. But
Is she British?
yeah. No, she's from the South, like Alabama, I think.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
she has two homes, one in Alabama and one in South Carolina. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, she's going to be on, and we're enjoying that. And let's see, I've got all kinds of
Oh,
yeah,
everybody's shh.
yeah, Wish I could.
If you don't know the story of C.S. Lewis and his dear wife, I don't know where you've been. It's kind of a thing.
My husband says that I think she's talking about me. She doesn't read that much. I think, yeah, sometimes I get a few too many things going at the same time.
I feel like you read a lot. Like when we first met, you did not read. I mean, you read, but not like you do now.
No, I didn't read very much. And I was like, I'm just here now. We're like, I'm still just chatting, but you made me very like, let's see, what is the word? I was inspired by you, but I also felt kind of dumb because you just know, I mean, you just know a lot of things about like Christian works. And Scarlett, for those of you who don't know, she's like, you read a lot of classics and you read like what I would call like important works or something, you know?
But
and
I
I'm like,
also read stupid stuff too. So guys, okay. This is the nerd I am. I am journaling every day, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, which is a young adult book that it's my favorite book of all time. I've read it 25 times probably. So I'm not serious. So serious.
He is pretty serious, actually. So, and yeah, you and another one of our friends were always talking about the things you were reading, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm lucky if I read Jesus Calling today. You know, the 10 sentences there. Like, it was not a good season for me. But being around you in those like closer in those couple of years and listening to the importance of reading. In your Christian walk really helped me. And my kids are getting older now, but your kids are littler than mine. So I don't know that that's like necessarily was my main excuse or anything. But the thing that I started to do. So if anybody that's watching struggles to read or find time to read, I built an accountability for myself. I'm in 2 book clubs now, one that I lead and one that I'm in, and I read because I'm in those book clubs, and that's just like a little bit of accountability for me. And that, in the other book club, I don't pick the books, and so it has exposed me to kind of some things that I wouldn't have picked on my own, which is good too, because you find new favorites, and then you also find some things you don't like. But yeah, so it's good. So
I don't know if I could ever do that. I can't. I have to choose my own book.
Too little control.
Yeah, I have a book club, but like we do like a theme. So then like the broad thing.
Yeah. So Shannon's first book, Scarlett, I might get it for you for your birthday. It's called Control Girl. This one's Comparison Girl, but the other one's called Control Girl. So maybe.
Okay, well, I need to look that one up because that's me.
Kathy is laughing at us. And Comparison Girl is available for May 19th. A week from Tuesday. This coming Tuesday it launches. Comparison Girl. Yep. And it's really good. And yeah, your granddaughter would probably like it. So Lisa says she doesn't know. I didn't know the Lewis story. Scarlett is just reading superior.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry. No, but Lisa's read. She's already listened to it, and now she's reading it, or vice versa. I think she listened to it first. So, all right. Well, I'm for real. We're gonna get off of here because now they're just laughing at us, and we're we're taking up time. Scarlett, thank you so much. I appreciate you partnering with me in this. And I actually didn't know that you liked Beth Moore this much, and so I'm just glad to know that. So yep. Yeah. So. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will, join us for June for becoming Mrs. Lewis, all but Scarlett. No, I'm just kidding.
Come down there and type some information for you guys.
Yeah, you can be commenting to Lisa as she discusses the book as she's been commenting to you today. Right? You guys can trade places for June. So, peace, everyone.
Bye.